and I don't really spiral, but I start to like definitely have signs that I need to do some like, I don't know how to word this. I'm gonna start my whole thing.
Some
again.
unhinged shit.
Yeah.
You can choose your own way. Set your sights real high, don't you be dismayed. You got every damn right to live your life now.
Hi, I'm Kirizal.
And I'm Alexea.
And today we're going to be talking about emotional regulation and kink. This was a question I got asked a little while ago on my TikTok about, I'd mentioned it in passing in a video and someone asked about how kink can help with my emotional regulation. I answered that, and then I got another question about does it have the same effect for you? So I thought it would be good for us to have a bit more of an in-depth chat about it, about me as well, but for both of us, how it helps us with our emotional well-being. So do you want to start a little bit, like what does it do for you, like both play and our dynamic out with the bedroom as well?
Yeah, so with the dynamic side of things, like that helps keep me organized in some backwards way. I have, like from an outsider's perspective, I have less organization or organizing to do, I guess. You do, or it's perceived that you do like everything, but I have to still micromanage what you're doing, if you've done it or not. When you've done it, is it done how it needs to be done? And it's kind of a way for me to keep myself in check as well as you. It lets me kind of have some organization within my life because I'm so chaotic without it. Prior to us getting together, or even when we were first starting to hook up, I was like awake till 6 a.m. and sleeping all through the day and just had no kind of timekeeping or anything like that. And since having someone else to manage a lot of the other stuff that I guess I was burdened with, I've noticed that I'm able to time keep more. Not only with it, like it's not only helped me my day to day for like my sleep schedule and being healthier and things like that, it's also helping me within my job. I'm always early. I've never once been late to work. I'm able to focus on putting the maximum amount of effort I can to my job, and all the stuff that comes alongside that. I'm able to keep up on my content creation. I actually have a schedule going, which touch what I'm keeping to, and it's because of like our dynamic and having a lot of the burden stripped from me that I'm able to really focus on other important things in my life. I mean, nothing is as important as you are, but this allows me to focus on other hobbies and interests as well.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense because the dynamic works for me in the same way, even though the responsibilities I have are the opposite. I struggle a lot with if I have too much downtime, I lose any sense of routine very, very quickly. So I got a lot better over the last few years as my mental health has improved, but I still struggled to maintain a routine for long periods of time. I would get into a good routine for maybe 3 months, maybe 6 months, and then it would start to slip. And as soon as I let the first 1 or 2 things go, all of it would fall apart, and I wouldn't be keeping on top of the housework. I wouldn't be cooking proper meals for myself. I would not heavily neglect self-care the way that I have in the past, but I would let little things slide. Having someone who sort of makes those decisions for me and makes it clear what my responsibilities are and what I need to keep on top of means that I can't just go, oh, well, I'll just leave that one thing for today. You know, if I'm really busy and really tired, I might ask your permission to move something over to the next day, but I can't just shrug it off. It's not a small thing. So that keeps me in my routine. I found as well that my mental and emotional health suffers if I have too much time to myself. So even if I'm maintaining a good routine, I don't do well with too much rest and too much relaxation because it's not relaxing for me. It gives my head a chance to start spiraling and doing weird stuff while it's unattended. Yeah. So having a lot going on in my life that keeps me busy is really, really good for my well-being. So obviously I work full time, I'm doing my content creation, and I've got all the responsibilities that I have in our dynamic. Yeah. And that stops me from getting into that state where I've got nothing to do, so then I do nothing for 2 months, you know, which is a risk for me. I think one of the things I've noticed about both of us is that both of us, what works well for our mental health is the routine that we have in the dynamic. Yeah. I do well being really busy, and you do well having quite a lot of downtime to focus on your hobbies and rest and recharge. And we both are able to have that with how authority is transferred to you and practical stuff is delegated to me.
Yeah. I guess from an outsider's perspective, it seemed pretty selfish on my behalf. I get all this time to focus on my stuff, but I still keep busy, and it's not like I just sit around doing nothing watching TV. Like we do plenty of that between us, and we have our like downtime together. Like even today, while you were at work, I wasn't just sitting doing nothing. I was being creative within what I do and on my side of like content creation, I guess is one way of putting it.
Yeah.
And then afterwards we watched some TV together, had some time together, and now obviously we're recording this, but like I find it easier with our dynamic to fit in our individual jobs and hobbies while also maintaining that like balance of doing things together.
Yeah.
Like, it's so much easier with our dynamic to kind of fit everything in some backwards way, because if you describe that to anybody like one of us does everything and the other person doesn't, they'd be like, well, how do you fit everything in? But I don't know, personally myself, I find it so much easier to fit everything in with our dynamic.
Yeah.
Like we still get enough time together and time doing our own thing.
Yeah.
Like, and it works really well.
Yeah. And I think because I have so much more that I have to do, so much more that I have to fit into my day, when I do have a few hours downtime, like we've had today, spending the afternoon just watching some TV together, I value it more. Where in my last sort of serious relationship, the last partner I was living with, we got into a real rut of, as soon as both of us finished work, we would just sit, put the TV on, and we would watch it until bedtime. The housework didn't get done. We were just eating takeaway and ready meals. We didn't ever go out and do anything. We didn't value our leisure time because we had so much of it.
Yeah.
And we just got into that rut where for us, you've got all your other hobbies that you do independent of me. I've got all my housework and all the things that I'm working on. And then when we do get downtime together, it's precious rather than just being stick the TV on because that's what we do.
Yeah. No, I fully agree. And it's great because like a lot of relationships, I know people don't necessarily get bored of each other, like it's a bad way of putting it, but don't necessarily appreciate time with each other because they're always together, and we are always together. Like it's rare that we do anything not together. Like I think the only time we ever aren't together is when I'm either at work because I'm still in the office, or you go out to go do the shopping and I'm in the middle doing something of mine. Like aside from that, we spend all our time together and it's still just as precious as the day we got together.
Yeah, definitely.
Like,
yeah. We are probably clingier than the average couple, which helps with that.
Yeah, probably.
But we have enough of the things that make us passionate about life, not just about each other, that makes the time more enjoyable because we're not in a rut. We're not just doing things because that's what we do.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, and it's great because during our downtime, for me, that's when I kind of regather my kind of thoughts and my emotions and assess what's going on within my head, and allows us to work on that together during our downtime.
Yeah.
Whereas having that set of rules and tasks for you to do helps you kind of regather yours. So it's not like we ever conflict with our emotions or our needs because we always A, talk about them, and B, we have our time individually to kind of gather what's going wrong.
Yeah.
To discuss it with the other person. Like
I find housework really therapeutic, and I don't think you would. Like, no. I think if we had a vanilla relationship and we're splitting the housework, for you, I think it would always be a chore. Mm-hmm. Where for me, organising, like sweeping up a room or tidying out a cupboard or whatever, it's almost like I'm metaphorically cleaning my head out at the same time, and it does me a lot of good. And I think some people are just wired that way and some people aren't. So I think even if we had a vanilla relationship, there'd probably be times where I ended up doing more of the housework just because I needed to do it to feel better. Where I don't think that would ever be something that would call to you. Same as how I like going for long walks. That's one of the few times we spend time apart as well, is if I want to walk 25 miles.
I definitely don't enjoy the long walks.
Not for you.
No, I don't find it clears my head at all. It just makes me think more about it when I get home.
Yeah, that's fair. I think another thing that I get from the dynamic, and it's one of those sort of big stereotypes about subs, and it's not true of every sub, but it's definitely true for me, is because I've always lived my life in a very kind of independent way. I've always made a lot of decisions. I've always kept very busy because, as I said, it's good for me. So in the past, I've done a lot of volunteering. I've pretty much always worked since I was 17, 18, I've always worked. I've been a very busy person, and quite often would put myself into positions where I had a lot of decision making to do, and never exactly been a leader, but was sort of usually among a group of people who were leading, like we're organising things. I need a space to retreat into where I'm not that person. I need to not be that all the time. And the freedom I get from making decisions in our personal life is something that I badly needed after, getting on for 3 decades of living that way. Being able to, when I'm with you and when I'm doing the things that you've told me to do, I do not have to make any decisions. I don't have to be in charge of anything. The only things that I'm responsible for are getting the tasks done that I've been given. I just have to do the next thing on my list and then the next thing on my list, and it just quiets all of this down so much and takes that pressure off. I find it is a really great stress reliever, where I know for you, having that control and making those decisions gives you a similar sense of comfort, but from the other side.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, I 100% agree with that.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot about how the dynamic helps us with our emotional well-being. What about play? Because that, for me at least, really helps a lot as well. What's it like for you?
Yeah, it helps me a lot as well. It's like, I don't know how to describe it other than it completely like clears my mind of anything, and it kind of settles a lot of like overthinking down, and it's not even really anything remotely related to what we're doing, like, and it's just anything that I've got going on, like any of my emotions or negative thoughts, just kind of, and it's not like they just get pushed down, they go.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to explain it. It's like, it just completely clears my head and puts me in a really good headspace, and that's not just a temporary thing either. Like, it's usually for quite a while afterwards that I'm still in that like clear thought process, clear headspace.
Yeah.
And like, it's really therapeutic in a way, I guess is the best way of describing it, yeah.
Definitely. And I think I probably know how that works, and I definitely know how it works for me. So something that I studied in my previous job was mindfulness. I did a DBT skills course. DBT, there's things I like about it and things I don't, but one of the things I liked about it was learning a lot about mindfulness. Mindfulness, people always think of it as like doing meditations, guided breathing and guided imagery and stuff like that. But that's just a way of achieving mindfulness. That's not mindfulness itself. What mindfulness is the state of being completely present in the moment and not focusing on the past or the future. Now, the reason that meditation is a common way of doing that is because if you're focusing on your breathing, for example, that's very present, that's a way of doing it. But doing things like art can be mindfulness, video games can even be mindfulness. If you're just focused on that exact moment, you're not going to be obsessing about, here's a traumatic memory from 20 years ago, here's an embarrassing moment from last week where I said something stupid in front of a friend. You can't, because you're switched on to what you're doing now. And you're also not going to be thinking about, what am I going to cook for tea tonight, or how am I going to deal with this big important meeting I've got at work, or how are we going to pay for this thing that we're saving up for. Like, all of that stuff gets shunted aside as well.
Yeah.
Kink is fantastic for that, because you're dealing with strong emotions, strong physical sensations, a really kind of intense situation. Sometimes it might involve conflict, sometimes it might involve role play where you're staying in a certain headspace, sometimes you're just that focused on the correct technique of what you're doing. You're not going to be drifting off and focusing on other things. You're not going to dissociate in that way, and that can be really healthy for getting you into a better headspace. And when you come out of it, you reprioritize which of those past and future things you actually need to be thinking about.
Yeah, for me, the closest thing I can describe it to, and it won't relate to many of your followers, but it does for me, is the same sensation I get when I drive. My head goes blank. It's all subconscious, like, events firing off in my brain that allow me to drive. And that headspace is when I perform the best within my driving. Like, I completely switch off to the point where I don't actually remember a lot of the driving I've done, and I have to watch it back on videos, and I remember like key events that like kind of snap your consciousness into like overdrive. But on a subconscious level, I couldn't tell you what I'm doing when I'm driving, because I just completely switch off. My mind goes blank. I have no I have focus, one focus, and that's driving.
Yeah. And
that happens to me when I go-kart, it happens to me with my sim racing. I just switch off, and what we do in the bedroom and the effects that has on me is that's the only other thing I can compare it to. Is being completely in the zone and just switched off, and it's just subconscious neurons firing for me to do basic tasks, and it's like a sense of bliss in a way. For me anyway, it is. It's like, I get so stupid after a heavy session. Like we both do, but it's like, it's just bliss. Just complete empty head.
Yeah, that's a lot of it for me, is that sort of empty head, definitely. What I also get from it as well, especially with sort of any kind of pain play where we're sort of pushing close to my limits, is that I feel very empowered by it and very strengthened by it, because there's a lot of pain that I just enjoy, that I just feel as pleasure, and it's just fun. And when we have a lighter session and we're doing stuff that's in that, it feels nice, and it still keeps me very present. But when we do something where I'm really pushing myself to see how much I can take, and when you're helping me sort of push those limits, within what I want them pushed, that reaffirms to me that I can overcome things that I maybe hadn't in the past thought I'd be able to. That shows me that I can survive things that in the past I was really afraid of, like some of the things that I've been through in the past where pain was inflicted on me that I didn't choose, and things that I have gone through where life got really difficult for periods of time, like with my addiction, I became very phobic of pain for a while, which is weird as hell for a masochist, but because it felt like something that would happen and would be out of control and that I couldn't opt out of, it became very scary. And being able to settle that fear and overcome it and learn to make peace with pain, because pain is part of the human experience. Like, whether you're a masochist or not, whether you're cautious about pain or you're reckless, people will experience pain, physical and emotional, throughout their lives.
Yeah.
And being able to face it on your terms and realize that it doesn't actually kill you is very, very empowering and makes me feel very sort of charged up and strong afterwards. I think that's where a lot of my post-kink stupids come from, because I have this massive rush of like, oh my god, did I just do that? You know, and I realize like what I've just done and how great it felt. I get this huge rush from it, and then I'm just floaty afterwards. I get this really nice lasting high from it. I think that's part of why I very rarely drop, because I just kind of ride that high until it gradually fades out.
Yeah. But yeah, like for me, like I get into that same headspace, and it's great, but I think it's a little different for me because I don't have that kind of fear of pain in the same way. I grew up being like a huge adrenaline junkie, and I've done all sorts of crazy and stupid things. I've gone skydiving, I've like done my racing, and I used to like do paintballing and stuff. And I mean, I had a horrific injury from that, like a life-changing injury, but I'm still not scared to do these things.
Yeah.
Because the reward from doing these things is like so much better. Like the adrenaline and the feeling that I get from it is like fantastic, and it's exactly the same with kink. Like I think that's why I have a little shame around what I do, because the feelings I get afterwards and the clarity I have and how much it just silences everything going on in my head is just it's bliss.
Yeah.
And that's why I enjoy it so much. And like I think it's the same outcome for us both, but I think it's different reasonings for enjoying that outcome.
Yeah.
Like for you, it's helped you overcome things, and for me, it's almost the same as me like being an adrenaline junkie and chasing that adrenaline high.
Yeah.
Like I enjoy the feeling, and it's clarity, and it's silence, and we both do it for, I think, different reasons, or we enjoy it for different reasons, but it's the same outcome for us both. It's just clarity. And like, I mean silence in the literal sense. Like I think the only time aside from like I said, my driving, that I have a completely clear head and there's nothing going on is after kink. And it's fantastic. Like I love it.
Something that I say a lot is that kink isn't a substitute for therapy, but it can be therapeutic. I know that a lot of people will need either some kind of conventional therapy or to work through their issues in other way as well. And I definitely think I wouldn't have got as much as I have from kink if I hadn't worked through a lot of my stuff first. I think if I'd come into it very unstable and very emotionally dysregulated, I would have found it harder to get the benefits from it, because I would have probably taken bigger risks, pushed myself too hard, had that kind of crash afterwards, and not really known how to process what I was feeling. Having a good handle on emotional processing first gives you that kind of grounding to use kink as a tool to improve on that. It's like the advanced class, I guess, for after you've dealt with your shit. How have you kind of found that process? Because I know that you sort of got on your own journey with processing stuff. How has kink kind of gone alongside that?
Yeah, so I won't go into it in too much detail to avoid making your entire audience base cry. It seems to just be people's reactions. My first therapist cried, like bawled for 20 minutes in the session, and I'm sat there like...
They are not supposed to do that.
No.
When I was a support worker, we were told, like, don't do that.
No, she just burst out crying, bless her. This has been a repeating theme since I was a kid. But yeah, like, for me, I had my diagnosis, and that hit me really hard. And there was definitely a period in my life, I think, where I avoided relationships, and I even avoided like casual hookups for probably about 2 years afterwards. I kind of shut myself out from the world and focused on my mental well-being. Like I quit my job to focus on myself, and that allowed me to pick up new passions. I got back into like my art, and that's when I met you, that's how I was sustaining myself. I was doing like commission-based art, and but it was a hobby, so I was enjoying it. Like and I went through therapy, I went through trauma counseling, and I got to a stage where I wouldn't say you're ever better or like cured with trauma related like therapy, but I got to a place where I could manage it. And then coming off the back of that and meeting you was like perfect timing. Like I just got myself into a good headspace where I'd accepted my diagnosis and what was wrong with me, and then I met you, and it was kind of like, well, I can now continue working on myself while also enjoying what we enjoy getting up to in the bedroom, kind of thing. And it was like almost like a perfect transition from the two. And I'm not saying you should go out, get a year of therapy, and then just go and find extremely violent kink. Not what I'm suggesting, but for me, that's kind of the process over the last, like, I say 2 years, it's 3 years now.
Yeah.
Coming up.
You say that, and I wouldn't say that the journey for any person going through trauma treatment is year of therapy, then violence. But I do think that after therapy, you have to find that thing that takes you to the next level with it.
Yeah.
You process the trauma, and then you learn how to integrate the traumatized parts of yourself into you and make peace with them and move on with your life. And that might be sort of continuing to process things through kink. It might be through art or music or writing. It might be through just sort of developing your skills in your work, wanting to progress your career. You have to find something that goes, okay, this has happened to me. I've dealt with it to the best of my ability. Yeah. I've processed it. And now I don't just stay stuck. I continue moving on with my life, and I continue to become better and better and better. Kink is a big part of that journey for us, and it will be for other kinky people, most likely. For people that kink doesn't appeal to, it's finding what is that thing that takes my healing to the next level.
Yeah, definitely. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be kink. Like, I think if I hadn't met you, for me, it would have still been driving, would have been my go-to.
Yeah.
Like, and it still kind of is today. Like, to be really selfish about it, I have these two amazing outlets. I have my driving, and I have you. It's fantastic. But if it wasn't for our kink, it would have been driving for me.
Yeah.
I get that clear headspace, and it completely clears everything out of my mind. And it's about finding what does that for you. I think kink is a great emotional regulator if you're doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah.
And if you're ready to be acting out whatever fantasy it is that does stem from trauma, like, I think it's something you have to be careful with, of course.
Yeah.
You've got to kind of almost already be in the right headspace to explore it.
Yeah.
Certainly from like a self-acceptance level. And it's the same with trauma. Like, the biggest part of my diagnosis in the last 2 years leading up to meeting you was accepting that is a part of me, and unfortunately it's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
And that I've just got to learn from it and be the best version of myself I can be afterwards.
Yeah.
And I think once I'd accepted that, it meant that I could explore the fantasies and the stuff that we do a lot easier.
Yeah.
And having a lot less risk to my own mental health because of it.
Yeah, definitely. I think if you're starting to play around with heavy psychological kink, where you're sort of enacting traumatic situations, or you're poking at insecurities, or you're pushing yourself into a very unfamiliar and uncomfortable headspace, if you're confronting parts of yourself that you find challenging and scary, all of that stuff, if you do that in an unstable mind, is going to be really high risk. If you do it from a place of stability, and you've negotiated it and you've planned for it very carefully, and you've got risk management in place, it can be part of your healing. It's just about how it's used. It's a tool.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah. So it's been really interesting talking to you about this. I know we have these kind of conversations all the time, but it's nice to have one that we can share with people. And I think both of us are in a really good place with how we sort of use kink as part of our kind of emotional well-being toolbox. So I hope that was helpful to other people. We'll be back really soon with something else. I have no idea what yet, but I'm sure we'll find out.
Yeah. Focused on my mental health being